All right. Hi, everybody. I know it's been a little while, but we're back at it here on Come Cloud with us. Today we have a return guest. Simon, do you want to give everybody a quick hello?
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Simon. I'm back to show you how not to do demos, or well, how to do demos when you actually prep for them and not assume. So should be fun. Should be fun.
Awesome. And of course, my wonderful cohort here in Canada, Abdul Kazi. So how you been, my friend? It's been a while.
Good. It's good actually. The weather's gonna be nice. Knock on wood. It's been after the multiple major storms. Now this week has been pleasant. So for us, pleasant is 5 centigrade, whatever that is in Fahrenheit. But yeah, it's like it might be freezing, but yeah, we're happy. We'll take it any day.
Nice. Yeah, I know. I've seen most of our snow melt today, so that's a great sign. It's like we've had enough. Almost 100 inches here where we're at in Rochester. So
Wow.
Exactly.
spring, bring on spring. Love it.
So before we jump into the main, Simon, let's recap for the audience, right? Like, I know you were the last demo that you were doing. Let's kind of recap that, and then
Yeah, sure. So yeah, thanks for having me back, I guess is the first thing. So yeah, to recap, was it September, October time, I think it was.
Yeah.
Something like that. So yeah, back in September, and we can link the video afterwards for it. I came to give the actual version of what this talk is going to be, which was getting started with blogging and why you should blog, and like all the pros around it. And then for the live demo of the session was deploying a Hugo static web app to Azure and using GitHub Actions and all of this. And around about, I think it's like the 30-minute mark in the recording or the live stream it was. Yeah, the demo gods were not with me. I did not make the right sacrifices. And they were very much against me on that day. And basically what happened was the GitHub action failed to run. We gave it 2 or 3 goes. And then we kind of gave up, called it quits. And then I showed an alternative version from my actual blog, which was really disappointing because I was really hyped for that, obviously, to come and speak to you guys and share like the end-to-end process of it working. So it turned into a little bit of like some live debugging, which is always scary and really stressful. So yeah, we then kind of concluded that. And then after we finished, bearing in mind that obviously I'm in the UK and you guys are over in America. So when we did that first like session, it was about 2 a.m. by the time we'd finished. And because I was then really disappointed and frustrated, I then stayed up for another 2 hours after that, debugging and going through and looking at Git stuff and pulling logs out and trying to work out why, because, you know, we're all techies at the end of the day and we want to know why this didn't work out. And then about 4 o'clock, I gave up and went to bed and going, you know, you need to have some sleep, come back to this with a fresh mindset and all of this. So that's what we did. And then a couple of days later, I then wrote a whole blog post, which I'm going to link in a bit, into like what would basically be like an RCA of what went wrong, and then how I fixed it. So yeah, that's kind of like what the summary is. So we're going to look through some of that. I'm going to show you the errors that I had when we did the initial demo and then how I fixed it. And then touch wood, if the demo gods are with us this time, we're going to do the whole end-to-end thing and it's going to work. So yeah, let's kick off. So for those who don't know me, yeah, I'm Simon. I've been doing tech. I think I was trying to work it out this afternoon while I was updating this blog post. I think it's about 12 years now. For the most of that, it was in like the on-premises world of doing education because it's a really forgiving and really useful learning environment, and then moved to the private sector, did some stuff with like some SME organizations, and then finally moved to Intercept, where I've been for the last 3 years doing Azure consultant and working with Azure. If you want to follow me, all my socials are here on the screen. And yeah, if you've got any questions, let me know. So like I say, I did this demo back in September last year. And during the demo, this is one of the errors that we ran into, or it was the show stopping error, I should say, that caused the problems. And as you can see here, and we're going to dive into this in a little bit, but the GitHub action that is provided by Microsoft, which uses the static web apps deploy version 1, uses the version of Hugo, which is 0.124.1. And as you can see here from this screenshot, it basically gives us a warning saying the site or the theme that we were using at the time was not compatible. And then after that, while we were then trying to then do the build for the site and compile all the themes so we could then push it to the static web app, we then ran into this issue here, which basically says that it couldn't evaluate a value because the theme had been recently updated. And for some reason, which I still don't fully understand, during the demo that I presented back in September, it ran into some issues. So that's kind of like a summary of what went wrong. So now I'm going to touch on a couple of points of my assumptions, which were effectively right from what I thought, but turned out to be wrong, which was never assume a demo is going to work, no matter how simple it is. So this demo basically consists of creating a Hugo website locally, compiling it, creating a GitHub repo, stacking that all together, pushing it up to GitHub, creating the static web app, and then deploying it. I was like, I've done this enough times. My current site for the built with caffeine.cloud site also runs on Hugo. I also have a dev site for when I want to test theme changes. That all works using the same GitHub action. However, when I came to do this talk, it didn't work. So my advice is, and I should have taken my own advice, and it's also seemingly common sense, is always check your demos, no matter how simple they are. So in light of all of this, I have pre-prepped tonight to make sure that it all worked. And annoyingly, all the GitHub actions passed when building. But what I did was, if you want to read and have a look in here, there is a GitHub action that I basically modified from a couple of source posts that I found from Chris Reddington, which basically changes how the GitHub action works. So instead of using the version of Hugo that's provided by the Microsoft action, what we're doing now is we're just going to download the latest release from Hugo and then use that to compile, build the site, and then just use the static web action to then just push the data into the static web app within Azure. So this all said, we're now going to go and start the demo. So we're going to go end to end and run this through. There's a couple of like prerequisites that you'll need, which is to obviously have Visual Studio Code installed, the Hugo extended package, and Git. So if we jump over to our virtual machine, which I've prepped for this evening, like I say, if you want to have a read in more depth, this is the blog post that I wrote, which basically goes around and summarizes what this talk is in terms of saying what the problem was, where the errors were, what happened with the theme change, and then my explanation and the troubleshooting of how I went through and worked out, and with the help of some ChatGPT and GitHub Copilot, then wrote an updated GitHub action, which then uses the latest version, which you can either download from here or direct from the GitHub repository that I linked. So as you can see here, what this then does now is it goes and checks and gets the latest version of the Hugo package, downloads it, and then copies it to a local directory. We're then checking out the GitHub repository for where the static web app is. We're then compiling the site within the GitHub action on the hosted agent, which then builds all the public files. We're then saying that we need to upload this. This took a little bit of working out to get it to work, which is why I then blogged around it. So if other people potentially run into the same issue that I did, you can just take this and run with it. And then, yeah, so this builds it. So the only thing that you would need to change in this section for the build and deploy job is just obviously the secret name in here, and then the secret for the GitHub token if you've called it something different. And that is pretty much it that's changed. So providing the demo gods are with us, what we're going to do is we're going to build the same static web app that I tried to do back in September. And then I'll show you with the updated version what the differences are. So yeah, you can just see what they are. So to start with this, the first thing we're going to want to do is create a new GitHub repository. So I'm going to call this SWA for static web app, then come cloud with us. Then the next thing we want to be able to do is clone this locally. So we're going to type in git clone. This then downloads the the empty repository, we're then going to build the Hugo static web app. So what this basically does is once you've got Hugo installed, to create the new site, you do Hugo new site, then you pass in the folder name. The reason why we need to have --force on is because when you're building the site normally, it expects the working directory it's going to put it into to be an empty folder. But obviously, because we're using a Git repository, it's got the .git folder in there for the source control. So once we've done this, it then tells you that your new site is created locally, and we can now go into that directory, and then we can open it in Visual Studio Code. So once this opens, this is what a default Hugo site will look like. The hugo.toml file for out of the box is where all the configuration is going to be. So there's going to be a couple of changes that we're going to make in here this evening or this afternoon, depending on which time zone you're watching this in. So like I say, out of the box, you get the base URL, you get the language site code, and then you get the title. So what we're then going to want to do is we're going to want to download the theme. So the theme for the session that we're using at the moment is the Bilberry Hugo theme, because it's a nice, simple theme. And yeah, it's relatively easy to use. So what we can do is it gives you a couple of different methods for how you can install the theme into your GitHub site. So when I originally started out on my blogging journey way back in December 2023, I opted for basically copying the theme, not this theme specifically, but the theme that I was using. I basically downloaded all the local files and then uploaded that. And then sort of as I got more used to how Hugo worked and the functionality of it, I then realized that actually using the Git submodule is more beneficial, because it means that if the site is updated with any security features or patches or improvements, it will automatically update. And then if you want to be able to customize the files for your site specifically, you can then just download those and put them into the layouts folder. For the sake of today's demo, all I'm going to look at doing is just basically cloning the Git submodule, creating the site, creating an initial welcome page to just show you how easy it is to get started. And then, yeah, the configuration around adding a custom domain on and getting the URLs set up. So if we go back to our VS Code window and make sure that we're in the right directory, what we want to then do is set up the Git submodule. So we do Git submodule add, and then the URL of the theme, and then we put it into the themes folder, which is themes / and then Bilberry Hugo theme. And then once we've done this then runs through. We can see that it's now cloning the directory and the files. And then if we go up to here, we can then see in here, there's all the local files. So with that sorted, the next thing we then want to do in the hugo.toml file is add the theme name in. If you forget to do this and build the site initially, it'll give you a page error. Sure, I can zoom in a bit for you, Chris. Is that better for those watching on screen? So yeah, once we've done this, we can then save this. And then to start the site, what we can do is we can type in Hugo server, and then this will build the site, so then we can have a look at it. So you can either, once it's loaded, yeah, it's now loaded up. So what you can do is you can either control click on the link here, or you can just go to the browser and type in localhost, and then it'll load this. And we can see here, we've now got our Hugo site running locally. And from here, we can do some basic customization if we want to. For example, we could change the name of the site to, let's say, Come Cloud with Us demo. And if you save this, you'll then see in real time the site then updates. So this is pretty much it. Now we've got the site working locally. We can then go and push this to the Git repository and then look at uploading it. So what we can do is, if we do Control-C to then stop this, we can then copy in the command which I've got set up from earlier, which basically adds all the files in, commits it with the commit message of Hugo setup, and then we do Git push. And this will then go through and then create, pushes all the content to the Git repository. So if we now go back to here and we do a F5 on the repository, Great. We've now got the base site in there. So the next thing we can now go and do is look at creating the static web app in Azure, which is relatively straightforward. So to do this, yes, this was my test from earlier to ensure that the demo actually works. What you want to do is go up to create, or from the search bar at the top, and then type in static web app. And then we will click on create. And then we can go through and we can name the static web app. So we'll call this SWA demo 2, for example. You can then pick the plan type you need. For the most part, for what we're going to do today, we can just use the free tier. Then you come down to the organization. So I've got it deployed to the Built with Caffeine organization. This will then come through and load up. We then find this and you go to the main branch. And then we come down to here. And for the build presets, we then select Hugo. And then we go next. For now, we're going to leave the deployment as deployment token. Go to advanced, leave this as West Europe. And then if we need to set any tags, we can do, and then go through and create. And that's pretty much it. That's the static web app created. What this does in the meantime is it deploys the resource into Azure. It then goes and authenticates to the GitHub repository, and then it creates the GitHub action. So if you've never deployed a static web app before, this is what the overview portal looks like for it. So it gives you a breakdown of, general overview of things. So we've got the URL that we can go to. We can look at the branch where it's configured. We can look at the workflow. Depending on how you want to do some configuration later on, you can also do preview testing. So it will build a preview site if you want to check content before you publish it. And then we can also add a custom domain, which we'll look at in a little bit. So if we go look at the static web app over here, so this is, like I say, this is the default example that you get by Microsoft. And like I say, when I did this demo back in September, it failed. And I'm still not 100% sure why, because it now works with the same theme, which has been updated. But yes, like I say, this is the default version we get, and this is what it looks like. And then once we've deployed it, at the end of the demo, I'll go through and show you the updated version. So as we can see here, we have the site, which is currently building. And yes, the demo gods are with us today because the site is built. Great. So what we can do if you want to get the URL is we can go back to here and we can then click on the URL and the site loads. But oh no, the site is loaded, but it is broken. Now, the first time I did this and when I was still learning out, this really confused me because I was like, but the site works locally, but it doesn't work in Azure. And the short answer is it's because of the URL, because of, if you remember, when we have our hugo.toml, the base URL here, when you first create the site, is example.org. And because of how the certificates are configured within the static web app, it's looking to use at the moment the address provided by Microsoft. So what we need to do to fix this initially is if we come back down to here, backspace all of this, and then put this in, and then create a new push for the site, we can then say updated base URL. This will then push. We will then, tell it to stage and push all the commits. This will then go back to Azure. It will then trigger the workflow in a minute or two if it decides to push. Yes, of course. The reason why we need to do the git pull is obviously because we've created the GitHub action, which was automatically created. So we need to just pull those changes and then, we'll be able to push that back. So if now we type in git push, it should then push the file up to there. Yeah. So we can see that this is now done and the site is now building. And this will take a couple of minutes to go through and build. And as you can see, it's building at the moment, but we still get this warning message here on line 42 saying around that the theme is not compatible. So for the configuration that we're going to look at in a little bit, it'll then use, like I was saying earlier, the latest version of Hugo rather than the version that's in the GitHub Action. So then you won't get those warnings ever again, and it'll always pull the latest version and then build. So that's the update pushed. So if we now go back to here and then refresh the page, site now loads because the base URL matches the certificate. Okay, cool, great. So we've got our default site now pushed and it's publicly accessible. The next thing we might want to look at doing is creating content. So to be able to create content, what we can do is in our VS Code terminal window, if you want to create some content, what we can do is, for example, we can use this line here. So we do Hugo new, and then we basically pass in the folder path and then, the markdown file for the file that we want to create. One of the really nice things that I found about with Hugo is the whole base of it is all written in Markdown, which is really easy. So if you're used to like writing stuff in GitHub and some other platforms like Jira or Confluence, then it's the same user experience. So most of the content that gets created will get placed under the contents folder. And then from in here, you can then go through. I like to structure mine with like kind of like from back in the WordPress days where you have the like year and then the month. So it's just slightly easier to track. So I create a post folder and then I do year and month, and then I just create the markdown file. So this is what you get by default when it creates. So what we can do is to change this, we can then set this to false. This then gives us a title. If we want to customize it for a slug, so you get a custom URL path for the end of the post that you're looking at, we could have, for example, welcome to my blog. And then coming down here, we'll just put hello world because everyone loves a nice, easy test message. So then if we want to check this locally, again, you can just type in Hugo server, which is what I spend most of my time doing when I'm building all my posts locally. We can then open this again. And we can see now that we've got the post in here, and that's it. And then you can go in and then read the post. And as you can see, we've specified the URL slug. So if you wanted to look at it online, you would then go to the FQDN, then /post, /the year, then the month, and then welcome to my blog. So again, to push this back to GitHub, what we can do is we can then cancel out of this. We can then go up to here. We can add the post and go update, added post, and then click commit. And then this will go through and again, push the changes to the static web app. So if we scroll up into here, we will see in a minute, I don't know why, press the commit button. Always catches me out. Upload of post. And then, yeah, we'll sync those changes. So while that's waiting to sync and build up, what we can also look at doing then is customizing the URL, because as much as the Azure Static Web App URL is really nice and it gives you a wonderfully quirky name, we want something slightly more, professional. So to configure this, there's a couple of ways you can do it. For the sake of this demo, I have all my Azure public DNS zones in my tenant because it just makes it a lot easier. But if you're using a third party like domain registrar or other cloud provider, you can configure it with a CNAME record. So to do this, we can come down to configuration. I think it is. No, sorry, ignore me. Custom domains. And then you can basically add as many custom domains as you want. So to do this, let me zoom in before chat calls me out. We can go up to add. And then, as I say, because all my DNS zones are in Azure, it's dead simple. We can just come to here, pick the DNS zone that we want to do, and then we could call this SWA demo site, if I can type, and then click add. This will take, depending on how fast the back end of Azure is, it normally takes about a couple of minutes. But while this is saving from the Azure side, what we can do is we can come back to the hugo.toml file. We can then update it and remember to add the HTTPS bit back in the front, because I've done this before and it's caught me out. So I've learned from that mistake as well. And then we can update this and say updated toml. We can commit this and then sync the changes. And again, this will take a couple of minutes for it to push to Git and then to build the static web app. So that's pushed to here. So if we now look at the runs, yeah, we can see that it's going through and all is working nicely. It always takes longer, I find, when you're watching it. And like, bearing in mind that this pipeline only takes about a minute or something to run, when you're sat here and watching it go through and process everything, it always feels a lot longer. But yeah, we're almost there. So it's now finished doing the build. It's now doing the deploy stage and pushing it into the into the static web app. What we can also do, if we go back to here, if this is finished updating just while we wait, so you can now see that it's validated the custom domains there. We can set this as default. And then if we go back to the overview page, we can now see that it is using our custom friendly URL rather than the automated default one provided by Azure. And then again, if you click on this directly, it will now take us straight to here with no SSL issues. So there we go. That is the demo I tried to give in September that didn't work, which now works today. So to move on to the next bit then, which was how do you prevent this from potentially having an issue again in the future, is if we find the Git repository that I created, which is this one here. So like I was saying earlier, this is the modified version of the deployment pipeline, which basically changes it so it gets the latest version of Hugo. It then checks to make sure, because when I was using this initially, it always checked for the latest version, but then they did a release which was like a minor patch but didn't generate the right files. So I then added some extra logic in here to basically make sure that the Linux tar file that we need had the right versioning in. So it basically goes through, checks, and says if it hasn't got the right bits and pieces that we need to roll back to the previous release to make it nice and easy. Then it goes through, it'll download the latest release. As you can see here, we then extract it, make sure that it's executable, move it to the correct directory, and then we do a check to say which version of Hugo has been installed. We then do another check to just make sure that everything's all good and happy. We then check out the site into the custom working directory. We then use the Hugo minify command, which basically builds the public files and that we need for the site to be built. And then, like I say, for the static web app bit, I've then basically configured this to skip the build portion, because it was the build portion, which turns out which is what caused the problem. So we're now literally just using this to push those files into the static web app. And again, like I was saying earlier, these are the only two lines that you really need to be aware of for the credentials for the API token and the GitHub secret, because they're predefined when you set up the Azure Static Web App. So what we can do to fix this then is if we go back to here and scroll up to the top and then go to code, we can then go to workflows and then we can edit this. Let's see if I can edit this right the first time around, because when I did this during the demo earlier this afternoon while I was checking, I got a formatting issue. So let's see if I get it right first time. So we're going to basically, if we move some of this down, so we want to keep the steps bit, that's the bit that I accidentally deleted. So we can get rid of the action step. And as I say, you can basically copy everything that I've provided in that YAML file. And then we can scroll down. I'm just copying this off my notepad from testing earlier, because I've learned today to always check demos. So if I paste this in, which looks, yeah, we need to fix this bit of the formatting to go and here. Yes, you need to come back. I'll fix that bit in a second. And then for the deploy and build step, I just need to copy this. So we're going to get rid of all of this default stuff and then just paste this in. So again, we're now just skipping the build, and then we're just saying that the Minify files that it's built and put under the public folder, we're then going to just push to GitHub and then the static web app. And we just need to fix the formatting in here, which looks about right. So what I'll quickly do is get a YAML formatter. All right, that one then. Try this one. If not, I'll put it into VS Code really quickly to just format it. Yes, that is not the formatting that we want. Okay, bear with me 2 seconds. I will stick this into VS Code locally and just format it quickly to fix the YAML. And then that's basically it. We can then do that and then push it, and it should be all good. Alternatively, let me see if I can do it this way instead. Yes, great. There we go. Cool. So that is our perfectly formatted YAML file now. So what we can then do is we can say that we're going to create a new post. So we will say how to use YAML, for example. This will then create a new post. I'm going to do a quick git pull to make sure I've got all the local changes so we don't get caught when trying to push the files back up. Then again, we just come into here. We set this to false. We can then put a slug in there for the URL to be how to use YAML, and then do, hey, this post is going to show you how to use YAML. And then we can publish this as new post and then click submit. And then sync the changes and then say, yes, this is fine. And then what we'll do while this waits to push and build. So to just clarify, when we use the static web function provided by Microsoft, we got the warning under here where it basically said, where are we looking? Yeah, down here, that it's using Hugo version 124.1 at the time of presenting and speaking on the 26th of February. The latest version is 144, I think. So it basically changes the underlying dependency, which you will see in a second. So if we go back to here, we look at this, we then look at this. So this is now using the updated version, and you can see here that it goes and downloads. Okay, it's now 145. Downloads the latest version, checks and make sure it's all happy. We then do another check to make sure that it's extracted and is on the right path that we can call back. We then do a checkout using version 4 and into the specific working directory. We then build the site using the Hugo Minify command, which then builds all the pages as HTML. And then finally, the bit that works, that didn't work last time, is it then builds and deploys and pushes it all into the static web app. And if we come to here now and refresh the page, it will show the, oh, it didn't commit. Interesting. it will post and then commit the changes. There we go. So if we scroll back up to here now and we look at this, yeah, there we go. So there's the new post. But yes, at least for this demo, and I know Alan's watching, I have all green check marks this time for my builds. That shows how the demo works. Because if you'd seen the run I did beforehand this afternoon, there were a couple of errors in there while I was working stuff out. So yes. We'll give this a minute or two to go through, and you can see now it just rattles through, downloads, pushes, builds, and that's now pushing to the static web app. And then we'll go and check the page once it's finished. Cool. Site is done. So if we now refresh this, there's the new post. So yeah, thanks, Richard. Like I say, like there's a good set of reasons for like getting into blogging, not only for like from a community point, but I was talking to Richard about this a couple of days ago, it was a week ago or so. It's being able to give back to the community, but you can also use blogging as like a personal wiki. So there's some bits and pieces you might have seen. There was a post that I wrote a couple of weeks ago on Azure Functions, specifically around how to connect using like a managed identity, because it's one of those things that I never really do. So I was like, I was working on an internal project for something. So I went through it and got it all to work. And I went, I'm going to go and blog this bit, because I always forget what you need to put in like the requirements.ps1 file and in the profile.ps1 to get it to work. So yeah, it's really good. And off the back of this, I've also encouraged a couple of other people inside of Incept to like start blogging as well, because it's great to see them helping and giving back to the community. So with this all said, Chris and Abdul, this wraps up the demo. So yeah, I'm going to jump back to the slides and just say, are there any questions? And yeah, how's that?
That was awesome. Nice job.
Very good.
Yeah, we were secretly, I know people don't get to see backstage, but you know, kind of like dancing here, thumbs up.
Yeah, we were doing extra,
like, oh my God,
extra rituals for the demo gods.
I think I lost a couple fingernails, but we're good. Nice stuff. But yeah,
that was good.
I don't see any other questions, but yeah, I would just encourage folks. Anybody have any questions? Any thoughts? Any suggestions? Anything else that it's on your mind aside from Liverpool, which we've been talking about, and some other football things. So.
Oh, nice.
Cool. No, it's been really engaging. So thanks everybody for tuning in, for the chat, for the back and forth. Simon, well done again. Good save. So nice.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me back. Because like we were saying earlier, like when I finished the first round of like part one, we were saying, I felt horrible afterwards. I was like, it's such a simple demo, it should just work. But it's why I then asked you very nicely if you would have me back to try and rectify my mistakes. And also why it was a really interesting, like the diagnosis side of it really was really interesting to work it out. And then also, the lessons learned of always prep demos, no matter how simple you think they might be. And make a sacrifice to the demo gods.
Well, I know we were talking at Ignite too. I mean, it's always good to just show like our vulnerabilities. We're not like we're not Superman, Superwoman, whatever else. It's like things happen, and it's usually out of our control if it happens.
Exactly. Which, like you say, it shows the real world side of it just adds a little bit more pressure when it's live in front of so many people, but. It could have happened like not live, like while I was prepping, and I'd have probably been more stressed going, well, how do I now get this to work for this? Or just phone you guys and say, can we reschedule until it works? So I don't mind it. It was good.
Nope. It's all good. So I do see Ellen had a question about asking about whether or not you were using Azure DNS Zones.
Yes, I am. So what I've got set up
Great
in
question, by the way.
Azure DNS is I've got a lot of child zones for playing around with bits and pieces, and then like some stuff for doing home things with Nginx proxy. So yeah, it's all Azure hosted, partly because when you're building and working in Azure, having your DNS zones in there makes life so much easier. You're not having to like log into Cloudflare and like do stuff. And there's probably ways that you could automate it with API calls and bits and pieces. But just having stuff in Azure when you're playing around with Azure resources is so much easier. Especially for like I've seen for like doing stuff with App Gateway or Front Door, you can just go click, click, and it's done. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Other questions, comments? Yeah, that's a good one. I do like, especially with just having Azure DNS zones right there. It's like
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that the updates to the rest of the world are any quicker than any other provider, but it's nice to be in the same environment and using whatever IC or the UI or whatever to just make the updates.
Exactly. And it's really nice as well that they've now brought DNSSEC out to the DNS zones. It's not one click though. I wrote a blog post on that.
Yeah.
The docs were basically say not for that zone, Rich, but on the root one there is.
Yeah. All right,
so
we got Richard coming in with a heavy artillery here. DNSSEC enabled.
I would expect nothing less for him. But yeah, on the actual built with caffeine like root domain primary DNS zone, it is, because it'd be really interesting. So in the docs, it's like, oh, it's one click enabled, and then you go and do some googling. It's like actually it's not one click, because you then have to go to the domain registrar and then create like a DNSSEC entry on there for it to all then validate through. Yeah. But yeah, I'll look. See, Alan's having a go now. This is what happens when you get all these, supportive people. So in here,
he's spilling the beans, folks. He's spilling the beans.
Yeah. So there you go. It is configured for in here, and then there was one other one I think I enabled it for. So I wrote a whole blog post on this. But this is the root zone, and then I think I did it for the AZ one as well. And then wrote a whole blog post, which I'll pull up in a sec, to basically say this is how you do it. So if you go to here, this is all of this. Yeah, here. Configuring DNSSEC in Azure. So if you want to go and see how to do it, I painfully went through and worked it all out and then put a load of screenshots in.
Awesome.
To help the next person out, because
amplify that one for us. I think it's this one, Simon, if you confirm. If not, that's okay. That's something else to read for folks too.
Yeah.
Awesome. Other questions?
No, I think they're just bullying me in chat now for fun.
I know.
Because that's what friends are for. Definitely, and I'd have it no other way. And like that's like the other really nice thing about like doing blogging. You get to like meet people like you guys, and obviously we got to meet up at Ignite.
Yeah.
Last year at least I got to meet Chris. Abdul couldn't make it. But like, and it's just such a cool community that we've built around this, and we all like just have a laugh and constructively bully each other, but support each other and help each other. So yeah, I really enjoy it, and it's a really nice group of people we've got.
Absolutely. Well, that's why I'm finding like everybody knows something a little bit different than you do too. So you kind of fill in the gaps with stuff, which is just fantastic.
And you can come anytime you want, so you're welcome anytime.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
There's potentially something that I'm looking at the moment. So do you guys know that with the VPN gateway currently in preview, you can now use certificates for authentication instead of pre-shared keys? So it's perfect timing actually, because I've got a customer which I'm working with at the moment who is wanting to do stuff with certificates instead of pre-shared keys. So I've spent this week working that out, and I got it to work this afternoon while speaking to Microsoft, and found the Microsoft docs time of recording in February, were a little bit off. So we had a support call with them yesterday afternoon, and we worked it out. So that's something that I'm going to look at blogging and maybe talking about in the near future once I've worked it all out.
Yeah, let's do it.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. Well, I guess if we don't have any other questions, we can wrap up, right?
Yeah, we
No,
don't.
you're getting a lot of high fives from folks, so thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see any more questions. But with that being said, I know it's getting late for you, Simon. So we'll
That's
let
not
you
too
know.
bad. It's 11:15. It's not as bad as 2 a.m. like when we wrapped last time. So yeah, thanks for making the time.
That's
Yeah,
why
it's worked really well.
we don't. Yeah, exactly. We don't. We want to make sure it does go midnight, past midnight or something. But
Yeah.
yeah. With that being said, thanks Simon again for coming in. This was great.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Chris, thanks for co-hosting again, and then thanks everybody for tuning in. Join us for the next session, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Thanks everybody.
Cool. Thanks all. See you later.
Take care.